So right now we're gonna go get the already composted compost to
Which
spread.
we got from Tam.
You got from
right?
Tam.
Yeah.
Cool. All
They
right.
just like gave it to us.
Oh.
Yeah, Brian said
Such nice people.
they just like called him and they were like, hey, I got a truckload of compost like I'm trying to get rid of.
Oh man.
Would you like to take it?
It's like heaven to me. A truckload of compost.
You guys all signed your liability waivers, right?
The garden is a student-run project. It grows food. It's an educational tool. It's a piece of land. It's a place to come together and work, ideally to do more than just work right now. The garden got started in 2010, and it got started with the Bennington Sustainable Food Project, which was then a very young group of students that had gotten together and were talking about issues with food sustainability on campus and elsewhere. And people got together and were like, we want a student garden.
So what are you doing right now?
Well, basically I'm just weeding because asparagus is coming out and it should just be more clear. So if there's like a little green grass like right here, it's kind of small because I've already weeded out the bigger ones, but you just basically pull until the root comes out with it. So almost like that.
I need some water.
But as you can see, the asparagus is growing into a little tree, and this happens right after the more classic kind of asparagus is growing, and it kind of starts flowering and looks like a Christmas tree later. Most people don't know that asparagus grows into like a mini tree, but it does. It's really interesting.
No luck. We're missing 2 pieces.
It's devastating,
Yeah.
but we might just have to improvise.
We have to add this.
A little less than 200 acres of open field that is beautiful, wonderful, and could be a spectacular resource for either the college or for social farms. And so looking into a better way to manage that, either just as pasture land, which right now is mowed, but not with any intention behind it, just to keep it mowed. And so looking at least better ways to manage pastures so that we're producing higher quality food. So I see a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for improvement.
So what we just did is there was some compost over there, which was horse manure from a farm,
White Creek?
I think in White Creek, and we had spread it on the front part of the garden that's like divided into wedges, which we call the pizza, and we talked to one of Carl's family friends, Brian Dennison, who owns a farm in Massachusetts. I think it was in New York, and he suggested to us that depending on the kind of wood chips that the horse manure was mixed with, we may have actually been taking nutrients away from the soil. So what we're doing now is we're putting the horse manure into windrows to compost, and we've taken it from the pile that it was in, and now we're mixing it with the compost that we've been collecting from the student houses through the Bennington Environmental Action Group.
It's time to rhyme. Can you relate to a sister going out to make your heart scream? Hey, yo, let me take it from here, queen. Excuse me, but I think I'm about to get to precisely what I am about to do. I'm conversating to the folks who have no whatsoever clue. So listen very carefully as I break it down for you. Nerdy, hyper, happy, overjoyed. Please with all the beats on my sisters have employed. Look, cause we're going down the sound totally a yes. Lady first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Did you do the bed?
I'm working on it. I'm gonna flag here, and then got all these people.
Yeah.
Put you guys to work. We can mark these out really quick. Yeah, we grow a lot. we're growing veggies primarily. We have like cash crops that we're trying to grow in larger quantities and sell at the dining hall, which in the past have been squash primarily,
There's some garlic,
and then also kale and chard.
and then we have asparagus, and then we're gonna start growing some herbs.
We're also going to do a lot of carrots and parsnips and beets.
And we also have an annual rye cover crop, also in what we call the pizza, where we grow a lot of things.
And tomatillos, because tomatillos have done very well here for whatever reason.
Yeah, I thought so.
Oh, you smell the mint over here?
We have seed orders to do. We have irrigation to put down. We have to work out our fertilizer situation, but overall it's pretty good. It's nice to be outside. Yeah. And
So where I see something like this going is right now it's a student project that is very supported by the school, but all of the work and all of the interest and all of the drive for it is coming from students, which is, I think, how it should be. And I think it's a really wonderful thing that it is based entirely on student interest and student ambition, which is definitely growing and definitely developing.
I was interested in a particular phenomena that, when well focused, to stare into the eye of the camera is to see a dark reflection of its subject. This is what I asked them to do. That, and to answer a few questions I may not have wanted to answer myself. It's easier, I imagine, being behind the camera, but maybe watching is easiest, except when the illusion makes itself apparent like a paper tiger. One said, a feeling of being overwhelmed, a not good feeling. Another, after a moment of introspection, said plainly that it was the opposite of a coat hanger, that it existed in the shoulders like the monkey on your back. Another said it was a reaction to stressful stimuli, and it could either embolden or cripple your efforts. The last said mostly the same, except he put it to me that it was because we had no more predators in this world. He may be right. We may have just forgotten what one looks like. I couldn't help but to try to answer this one myself. I think the worst must have been when, as a child, my suspicion that people were buried in boxes was verified. I can safely say that's all I thought of for a week, lying in a box and rotting for all eternity. A good friend told me of her realization that the people in power were just people, that they were just as prone to error as any one of us and no more infallible. Another friend told me of his experience in India of being pursued by a pack of wild dogs, and the moment he dared to turn his head and find out for himself how many were behind him, there were a lot. The next one told me about his identity, telling me how he had realized that it was a transient thing, that all the people he'd been were gone, and he wondered when the current picture of himself would become obsolete. The last one told me it was his discovery that there are paler fish the deeper you go into the ocean. I've begun working at a homeless shelter. To this question, I wondered who here could have matched stories like theirs, of being shot at, of starving on the edge of the road. These are what I'd imagined they'd say, perhaps naively, but really, it's all the same. A threat is just a perception with teeth. One told me it was bad teachers, telling me of the time he, instead of writing an essay, wrote a 4-page criticism of his teacher's character. He was failed for the marking period. Another told me of the time he had hesitated while jumping out of a moving car and was subsequently dragged across 100 feet of gravel. My friend told me of being in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and knowing that no one was there to stop the chaos but her father and the shotgun he would occasionally fire outside of their house so as to warn off would-be burglars. The other, unsurprisingly, told me again of the dogs who pursued him in India. A lot of nothing, one of them said, but like nothing, it was everywhere, but impossible to touch. Also, I was told acceptance, affection, a big unexplainable thing. Loving is presence, one of them told me, and that it can be transmitted between any two things as long as they were open, like taste to the tongue. A friend told me of the English language's obsession for synonyms for love, and that like, or to say something is great or good or grand or fantastic, still falls short of love. To say that one loves something is somehow beyond all those words. He told me that if that was true, he hadn't the slightest idea what love is, adding, "I'd like to, though." School, one said with a sigh, getting through it and being happy about it. Another, the same one who had handed his teacher his own personal criticism, said it was going to a class with a teacher who he disliked. I wonder if there'll be a repeat offense. The next, when asked, said breath, but only because I asked, and noted his desire was to be fully present in breath and body. The last, contemplating, told me that he could not remember if he had thrown away his Pop-Tarts wrapper. When asked if everything would be alright, I guess to my surprise, there was a resounding yes. One told me yes without thought, adding that it may take a long time, but it was sure to come. Another told me of his difficulties with his parents, saying that, with all the things he's been through, he's still smiling. Another said yes, but that it all had to go to shit first. That's just how things get better. The last told me of the tarot reader who had told him that if he stuck to one thing, he'd always be successful. I guess I believe so too, that everything will be alright, but there's something off-putting about hearing honest optimism about the future. When I filmed them, I let them know they were being filmed. There was a common response: laughs, shifting limbs, checking appearances. Then something else happened. They stopped laughing. They stopped shifting. They just stare at the camera, at themselves, with a new kind of confidence. The camera finally cracks them, if they are even them. If the pictures match the words, did you assume they did? The mind is glorious in its ability to reason.